But let me welcome all of you. I represent the 1st Congressional District of North Carolina. This is the area that consists of 23 counties east of our capital city of Raleigh. In the old days, it used to be called the Black Second. And it was called the Black Second because this was the center of the universe during Reconstruction. I love to tell the story that at the end of slavery, there were 4 million former slaves who became citizens. Some say by the Emancipation Proclamation, others say by the 13th Amendment, regardless of which theory you subscribe to, 4 million former slaves became free. And 300,000 of those lived in my state, and most of those lived in the eastern part of the state, which later became known as the Black Second. The first thing those former slaves began to do in 1865 was to build churches. If you were to go into my district, and Danny Ellis has a church in Enfield, and he lives in my hometown of Wilson County, and Thomas Walker over in Rocky Mount. If you were to go to those churches and look at the cornerstones, you would see 1865 and 1867 and 8 and 1872. The first thing those former slaves did was to build churches. But not only did they build churches, they decided to build schools, one-room schools, and those schools were attached to the churches. And so from 1865 forward, it was the church. And I'm a missionary Baptist, and that was essentially the main denomination during those days. But there were AME Zions and a few others. But they began to build churches and to build schools. It was a Renaissance period in my part of the world. But not only did they do that, they decided to get registered to vote. History tells us that every African-American male in eastern North Carolina became a registered voter without exception. Women could not vote during those days, but every male became a voter. And they got involved in their communities. And I have you to know that there were 4 African-Americans in our part of the state who were elected to Congress during the Reconstruction. The first one was John Hyman in Warren County in 1872. Warren County, yes, he was. He was a pioneer. The next was James Edward O'Hara, who was a black lawyer in Enfield, this man's hometown, who served in this Congress. After that, it was Henry Plummer Cheatham from the Henderson area, who served here for 2 terms. And finally, the famous George H. White, who was elected to this Congress in 1896, began his service in 1897, and then he had to end his career. Why? Because our General Assembly, just as all legislatures across the South did, in 1900, they enacted disfranchisement laws that made it literally impossible for the former slaves to register to vote. A literacy test, which said that you had to be able to read and write the Constitution to the satisfaction of the registrar before you could become registered to vote. And then all of these registered voters had to come off of the registration rolls. And when they came back to register to vote, white citizens were allowed to register, African Americans were not. And so that ended the career of George H. White. From 1901 forward, we did not have another African American in Congress from the South until many, many, many years later. But now we have 14 serving in this Congress from the southern states of the United States of America. It's a new day, and it came about because of blood, sweat, and tears by many people that I don't have time to mention. But Charlie Rangel is one of those pioneers, and that's why we love and adore Charlie Rangel. He is our hero. He is the dean of, even though John Conyers has been here longer, we go to Charlie Rangel every time we run into a jam, and he tells us how to figure it out. So thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Yes, I am a co-sponsor of 1964, and we need to get the word out that we need to get it passed. Jim Clyburn made the health care speech. I've got one of those too, but I won't give it to you. But this is the week. This is the week that we're going to make it happen in the House of Representatives. We're going to send it over to the Senate. I don't know what's going to happen there, but stay tuned and stay focused and stay engaged. Thank you. May God bless you.